My purpose today is to kind of talk through what would it look like if we were more strategic about our own development or the development of our teams and our broader organization. And I wanted to introduce six patterns, of that I think they're worth thinking about and addressing. And maybe some of these you are well versed in and it's no issue. And some of them might provide a light bulb moment for you to think about what you might do. I love alliteration. So they all start with C. So if you're listening and you're reflecting on some of this, just ask yourself, if I had a managerial challenge right now, who would I talk to? Who would I pick up the phone and call? I've mentioned Rebecca a few times. Rebecca and I talk multiple times a week. She's definitely one of the first people I would call if I didn't understand something or I was feeling like I just need to bounce an idea off of someone. Who's your cohort? In LEAD, the whole program is designed as a cohort learning model. So we want people to come together. We want them to build a better support network. We know leadership is lonely. And so by bringing those folks together who are at the same space in their career, they build a cohort. And then we layer in some extra expertise and some more experienced leaders to add the right questions that help that cohort grow. So lack of collaboration can be solved if we are more intentional about who we bring around us. Fourth one, just checking my time here, lack of connection. So connection here is not like collaboration. I'm not talking people to people. I'm talking about connection of theory to practice. So, one of the problems is we love learning a thing. And in the session before, I was teaching about the double design model for new product development. That's a fine theory. It feels a lot different in practice. So that's the lack we're talking about here, lack of connection. So what are you learning right now that you can apply to a project? When you're missing connection, you miss application. And when you miss application, the learning doesn't stick. So what you want to be able to do is apply your learning to something as quickly as possible. Your main task is to then take whatever I'm hearing and learning and shorten the distance between when I heard it to when I'm trying it. So that's one of the, the life hacks or leadership hacks, if you will. How can you shorten that distance? And one of the ways we do that in LEAD is we take, all students have to do a work-related project. They don't have to complete the project in the program, but we teach them concepts and then they figure out, how could I apply this in my context, right? If we're talking about project management and they've never done a project charter, that's a great starting point for your work project. If they have a challenging conversation with a stakeholder and we do a thing about crucial conversations, fantastic. How can you apply that in your next conversation with your stakeholder? So we want to make sure that we're not just talking about a thing, but that they are actually able to put that into practice. So that's the fourth one. Fifth one, which we do see a lot, especially with newer managers, is a lack of confidence, right? And we all know that. We've all felt that. Here I'm talking about, that self-confidence piece in your own abilities. And, the problem that occurs is it's almost like low motivation, that I'm worried or I have that imposter syndrome raging. I'm afraid to take that risk. I'm afraid to hold that meeting. I'm afraid to try that new activity. And so that low motivation really robs the confidence and the excitement about moving forward. So if you're sitting here and you're newer, think about that. What are your natural abilities? How might you use your strengths to assist others, whether they're on your team or not, right? What are people coming to you for because you know things? And then in your plan, find your strengths. If you're not sure, go do some sort of assessment. Find out what you might do to learn more about yourself and really get to know that person that's looking back in the mirror, right? One of the tools we use at LEAD, again, just using LEAD as the example, is all students after their first class run through a DISC assessment. And the DISC assessment measures kind of their engagement and motivation and gives them a report that tells them about how they prefer to work. What are their motivators? What are their stressors? It's pretty accurate, but it's not designed to be an assessment. It's really an indicator and a starting point for conversation and reflection. So what we do is ask them then to think about, what does this mean? Does this make sense in your workplace, in your relationships with others? You can be a leader from any one of the styles that DISC might provide, but how, and what does leadership look like then? So getting that self-awareness is one of the very first things we have students do in LEAD. Last lack, and that's the lack of contemplation. I think this has become one of the biggest challenges. And here I'm meaning contemplation as time set aside for reflection, ultimately. That are we doing the thinking we need to do? Our world is full of distractions, opportunities for interruption. And as a result, we rush on to the next thing and we don't solidify the learning. And so that's the pattern. And then the problem is it creates low self-awareness, that we haven't stopped to think about our own feelings about something. We haven't stopped to ask others for their perspective. And that low self-awareness perpetuates future problems because we don't learn what's working and what's not. So the obvious plan, and a very difficult one to do for many leaders, is to just slow down and reflect, think through what's happened in the day. What do I do about it? And so one of the challenges we ask people to do is we build a lot of reflection time into LEAD. Every online class ends with a question or two or a prompt. We give them a reflection journal and we tell them actually write it down by hand. Don't type it. You're probably way faster at typing it, but it's not about getting it done. It's about slowing down to think. And when you write it with your hands and you spend the space thinking, it actually sticks better. And so, one of the things you might think about is like, what are you noticing each day when you go to work? What is your energy level like? How motivated are you to face the tasks that you have to face, right? And how might you introduce more opportunities for reflection?